Hi there everybody, this is David, and we all know there are a ton of great RPGs over on the SNES that everybody already knows about. There's Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Earthbound, Secret of Mana. I mean, that list just goes on and on. But then, you also have some games like Terranigma, which a lot of people either, completely forgot about, or they don't even know existed. And today, I want to tell you all about it, and what's so great about it, and why it still matters. And that's totally worth a sub as you come and you join a party and you level on up with me. Thank you so much for your sub, your like, and your brand new hype. It helps me out a ton. Now, the reason why a lot of people don't really talk about this game is because it was a victim of localization. Yeah, it did come out on the SNES back in 1995, but only in Europe and in Japan, so a lot of Americans never really had the chance to play it. But what really makes it so cool and stand out for the crowd is that instead of running around and saving the world like in a typical action RPG, Terranigma actually has you rebuilding that world. You're not just saving it, you're bringing the continents back, you're resurrecting the plants and the animals, you're resurrecting humanity, and then you're finally evolving the life that you revived. Terranigma is actually the final game in what's commonly referred to as the Heaven and Earth trilogy, along with some games that you might know and heard of because they came out in America, Soul Blazer, and Illusion of Gaia. Now, these three games are not connected in a traditional trilogy where you have the same characters or one story that continues from one game to the next. The connection between the three games is a whole lot looser than that, but they were all developed by Quintet, they were all released on the SNES, and they all have the same basic idea of restoring a world that's been destroyed or sealed away. And what I really like about these three games is that you can actually see Quintet taking this idea and then doing a little bit more with it every single time around. Soul Blazer, the first game of the trilogy, is the simplest version of it. You're basically going around defeating the monsters and restoring people, animals, and other parts of the world as you slowly bring these places back to life. Then there's Illusion of Gaia, which takes all these ideas but in a completely different direction. It has you traveling around the world, but it's kind of based on real Earth, but also mythological Earth. There's the Great Wall of China, there's Angkor Wat, which are real, but then there's also the lost continent of Mu, which is fake. You play as Will, who has these telekinetic abilities, he fights with the flute, he can read people's minds, but he can also transform into different warriors. It's a really cool game, and it's a whole lot of fun, and I love it. But what's even better than that is the third game of the trilogy, Terranigma, which basically has you bring the entire planet back to life. Here, you play as Ark, and he lives in the underworld village of Krista. He's kind of like a troublemaker and a rebel, so he sets out to leave the village and release the sealed continents of the surface world. But whenever he does, the people in Krista become crystallized, and Ark ends up having to travel across the upper world, this newly resurrected Earth, and bring everything back to life piece by piece. And that there is probably my favorite thing about Terranigma. The exploration. Not really the combat. The combat's there and it's great, but I love exploring in an RPG. You start off in this empty, barren world, and as you progress, you bring back the continents, the plants, the animals, and eventually humanity one by one. Then you actually get to watch civilization slowly develop. And that's something that I always thought was really cool. Because, most RPGs will have you, out there saving the world, but you don't really get to see that much of a difference after you've saved the world. After you defeat the final boss, everybody celebrates, the credits roll, but if you go back to that first town, there's always that same guy. Welcome to Canaria Village. Nothing really changes, but Terranigma actually gives you that feeling that things are really and truly changing, that your choices actually matter. You're bringing people back to life. You're developing towns piece by piece. You're developing trade routes between the towns, and the world slowly becomes more and more alive. And that there is really one of those things that makes Terranigma feel different than a lot of the other RPGs around there. The world itself is actually part of the progression here. You're not just gaining levels and buying better equipment, you're actually instead changing the world around you. You are evolving it from a barren wasteland of nothingness to like a bustling metropolis. And it's all you. You are driving that change, which is a whole hell of a lot more interesting than just buying, a fire sword instead. Now, let's talk about the gameplay itself here. It is an action RPG. You don't fight with a sword, you actually fight with a spear. But you're not just like slashing and stabbing things with your spear. Arc gets different attacks and abilities and skills. You can do like an upper thrust and a lower thrust. You can slide around. So you're not just standing there and attacking things over and over and over again. But again, it is the exploration, it is the world that makes Terranigma so cool and so special. There's all these little moments that happens. Like there's this one desert town. You go there, and at first it just seems, just like any other town that you're going to visit. But then you get in there and you slowly realize that, it's different. Things are wrong. The people are like zombies, and it has this really creepy atmosphere to it. You're going around, you're talking to these people, you're learning about what happened, and then you're eventually dealing with it and helping the people's problems. There's a whole other town there. It's kind of based on France before the French Revolution, and the king's unpopular, the people are unhappy, and then an election happens. The people are going to decide who is going to lead this town, and you get to vote. You get to make that change. And depending on who you vote for and what you do, the town develops and changes. There's all these little side stories that are happening around the town. There's a princess who's traumatized, she can't speak, and you're helping these characters move on with their life. You're helping them have a better life. You are slowly going through the world and evolving and changing that world through your choices, which is really something that you don't get to see a lot in an action RPG. It's just so cool, it's just so different. Eventually, humanity evolves and it gets a little bit too human. You kind of stomp all over the nature that you first revived. At first, you could actually talk to the plants. You could talk to the animals. You can help them out. But as humanity evolves and changes, you kind of lose that ability. And it's almost like humanity is stomping over nature, and it's kind of sad. There's this one town called Freedom, which is essentially Terranigma's version of America, and you help it grow and evolve, of course, and eventually you actually get an airplane. You start traveling around the world, and while that is cool, again, it's also kind of sad at the same time, because you kind of miss your plants and animal friends that you made along the way. It's really kind of cool because you get this sense of progression. You start off in this little teeny tiny underworld town, and eventually you're traveling all over a resurrected Earth, flying around this airplane, building up trade routes, and dealing with a civilization that didn't even exist at the beginning of the game. And that is just so cool. All these three games kind of take that basic idea of restoring life. Soul Blazer, it's pretty basic. Illusion of Gaia has you going through the entire world with your little friends, and Terranigma takes that concept and just runs with it. You're not just restoring a village or helping the people who are there, you're actually reviving it yourself. You're watching an entire civilization develop from the ground up, from nothing into something that looks recognizable. It's really cool. Now again, unfortunately, as we all know, Terranigma never did get an official American release, but that might be about to change, because Clear River Games seems to be teasing a little something in relation to Terranigma and the Heaven and Earth trilogy. We don't know what it is, but we should know very soon, because this is a game that definitely deserves to be remembered and not just left in the dustbin of history. This is a game that stood the test of time, and that to me is the hallmark of what a fantastic game is. Are people still remembering it and talking about it 30 years later? And in Terranigma's case, yes, they are. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Terranigma? Did you like the game? And do you think that we're going to be getting an announcement related to it? Let me know down in the comments, and as always, have a good day.